Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope you're having a great Saturday. Today's Saturday Spotlight, as you can see, is Love of Silence. I like to start out the beginning by saying the man behind me, which is Miles Davis, better known as Miles Dewey Davis III, introduced to me the idea of silence in music at a very, very young age. A song called So What that had a certain pleasantness to it, a certain patience to it, and at the same time, it gave pause. It gave a pregnant pause where a sound played and then it went out into the atmosphere, and then the next sound played. A rhythm and a cadence, brothers and sisters, that allowed us to reflect on the music down to the note that we had just heard. These days, when we talk about love of silence, it's immediately flipped to a lot of people fear of silence, the fear of not being heard, the fear of not being recognized, the fear of not being valued, the fear of not having value in a situation, or even more so, the fear of not being seen. That's what it's come down to, brothers and sisters. But today, I want to look on the positive aspects, the ramifications of a love for silence or a love of silence. And when I say love of silence, I'm not talking about shut your mouth. No. I'm talking about a deliberate type of action whereby you sit in a space and through your auditory are able to have a mental, emotional, and spiritual connection to the environment around you. That sounds like a lot, brothers and sisters, but it's not. This is nothing new. This is in the Bible. This is in the Quran. This is in the Torah. The whole idea of the ability, brothers and sisters, to listen when there's no sound. We all come into this world, brothers and sisters. We come into the world in silence. We don't hear the world around us. We're in our mother's wombs, and that's what we hear, heartbeats and things like that. But those are life noises. They're not sounds. Those are life noises. When you come into the world, the first voice you hear is yours. So today on the Shout Out Show, I want to look at some of the benefits of having a love of silence. In some regards, why we need to go back to valuing silence. Now, I'm going to talk about the old days and things like that, but I'm also going to try and bring into play some of the things where silence has an immediate, and I want to say a transactional and transformative value for the things that we're going through today. I don't want it to be a one-sided conversation because my values are different from your values. I see silence a different way than you may see silence. And we can all talk about that. But the one thing I want to make sure that we stress on today on this show is that it has value, it has importance. I'm going to tell you some things about myself. I hope you guys don't mind. And if you feel like it, jump in and tell me some things about what you're talking about. But my thing, I want to make sure, and I don't want to underemphasize it, but I don't want to overemphasize it, is that silence is natural. Silence is natural. And when things are natural and organic, they automatically have value. They automatically have place. They automatically have presence. And sometimes in a world like we're in today, we're talking pandemic, pre-pandemic, oftentimes people don't want you to have that silence. It's not even don't want you to have that silence. They don't want you to even think that you have that silence or furthermore, enjoy it. So for whatever we're going to have on this show for a discussion for the next 25, 30 minutes, we're going to talk about the joy, if you will, the love of silence here on the Shout Out Show. Now, I'm not going to be putting my finger up going, shh. That's an immature conversation. We're going to talk about its placement. We're going to talk about its value. We're going to talk about why inherently we really, really love it and why inherently we really, really miss it. And this could be, brothers and sisters, because everything out there is competing for our attention. The one thing about silence is that when you have silence, people don't compete for your attention because you don't give it to them. You're using it in a place where it's a natural foreboding of life, expectation, and reflection. Tune in Love of silence, brothers and sisters. Let's start the show. Preacher Moss. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. If this is your first time on the Shout Out Show, thank you for tuning in. Our title, of course, is Love of Silence. Listen, to get yourself acclimated, get comfortable right away. Listen, jump in that comment section if you have anything you want to say. Hit the comment section, which I get you up and give you what's affectionately known as a shout out, your first shout out. And if you don't mind, we're at 166 subscriptions, trying to get to 167 by tomorrow. So please go on in and click that subscription button, the like button, the notification button, whatever buttons are down there, click it. But if you don't want to do that, cool. Do us all a favor. Don't be a wallflower. Join in the conversation because you, brothers and sisters, are part of a special experience that's been happening for the last 420 some days. This is the Shout Out Show. While I'm the host, brothers and sisters, I'm just the host. I don't own this platform. I often say, it's the guests that make the show. Well, it's the guests that we have that come on here repeatedly and they make the show. Not only they make the show, they evolve the show. And I want to say the gravitas of my guests has allowed me to be a better host. So let me just throw that out there. So we're hoping that you can be a person that adds to the mix and increases the flavor in the secret sauce. It makes the Shout Out Show even a little bit better. Okay, that's number one. Okay, and number two, we want to give a shout out because tomorrow we're going to have our Father's Day show. We're going to have some guests on Father's Day. Maybe, maybe not. I might just be talking about the whole idea of fatherhood. We don't know. You know how it is when we're doing a shout out show. But I hope you will attend. And if you have an opportunity, I want you to, specifically people who maybe lost their fathers, or maybe lost contact with their dads, or even if you saw your dad yesterday, make the walk for them. Make the walk for them. And I'd like to have a list. So I just want to give a shout out to all the dads tomorrow. Maybe you can go to permissible laughter at gmail.com and give a shout out for your dad. Maybe we can read it over the air. How about that? Permissible laughter at gmail.com. Shout out for Father's Day. We're going to give him a fun. And no, I want this thing to be not even orderly. Fathers are not orderly until they have to be. We want to be honorary. We want to let it all hang out, because that's the way my dad was, and the fathers I saw in my neighborhood and I grew up around. I mean, yeah, they knew how to put on their shirt and tie, but they knew how to get out and have a good time. And most importantly, check this out. They knew how to have a good time around their kids. All right. Let's get in the shout out show section. Who's our stars in the building today? We got Sister Ree. How you doing, Sister Ree? I saw Sister Ree, and I believe her sister serenading her father up in Michigan for her birthday. And I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I'm not saying you can't sing, Sister Ree, but I'm not saying you can sing, Sister Ree. Now, it doesn't matter. The joy in your father's face was so fun. And, I don't know if people understand that when our parents get older, the attention that we give to them is a beautiful thing. I mean, they treasure that. That's better than any currency you can give them. All right. So, Sister Ree, thank you for coming on the show. As you guys know, she's our craft services director, dietitian, show dietitian, making everything taste right on the Shout Out Show. Thank you so much, Sister Ree. Next up. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullah barakatuh. My main man, Altaf Rashid, straight up, straight down, Mr. 6 o'clock, tuning in from Canada. He is our official Canadian ambassador to the show. Brother, thank you so much for coming on the show. What is the show without our Canadian ambassador? Making sure that the checks and balances work on this side of the border and the other side of the border. I'm going to tell you what works on both sides of the borders, brothers and sisters. Silence. We'll be to that in a minute. Altaf, thank you for tuning in, brother. Appreciate you. Next up, my main man, Adam Khan. What's going on, beloved? Good to see you, man. Please make sure you give out the greetings and salutations in your house, my Trinadian brother. Make sure all the hugs are bound and appropriately placed, and make sure you give your father a big old slam from your brother, man. Glad you can make it on the show. Hopefully, you might like this. Adam Brothers and Sisters is in the arts, so he might even have some perspective on this whole thing of silence because he's an actor. In acting, if you can't use silence as an actor, you're pretty much not a good actor. So I just threw that out there. Adam, I'm hoping that you can use silence. All right. Okay. But I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Next up, I know it's his birthday. I know and you had a blast. I can't sing, but you can hum. You should have hummed. That's all. No, I'm just kidding, sister. You know what? I take that stuff for the law. That was bad. I put it out there. It was your father's birthday. You were singing to him. So after that, let me just put a period there. There's no comment. Let me just put a period. It was your father's birthday. There's a silence right there. Just there was nothing else coming. Thank you so much, Sister Reed. Appreciate it. And we have Sister Satana working the ones and twos on the production. Thank you, Sister Satana. We appreciate you. And we're going to go ahead and get this show started. Juneteenth. Oh, yeah. Happy Juneteenth, everybody, whoever's celebrating. I told you yesterday I wasn't in the Juneteenth mood, brothers and sisters, because, it's when you look around and you see things that need to happen, you have a pecking order. You have a list of priorities. When I looked around in terms of the African American needs assessments, Juneteenth was not on that list. And just the fact that nobody asked for it. Like, I've been in the masjid, nobody said, brothers and sisters, let's make dua for Juneteenth. Ain't nobody say that. Nobody said it. And like, folks gave it to you. And I understand now that you took that. It's like, Barack Obama as a black president. Now you got a black president. You can't talk about racism anymore. That's the way it felt with this whole thing. Now we got Juneteenth, and, I'm not going to get on Juneteenth. Okay. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, little bit. Just left Milwaukee's Juneteenth celebration. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I lived in Milwaukee and they invited me to the Juneteenth thing, I didn't go. I was like, dude, I'm from DC. We don't know about no Juneteenth. I mean, we knew about history. And I guess it's almost a bad way to say, hey, when freedom came, we got ours. Y'all waited 2 years. The fact of the matter, they didn't wait 2 years. They were tricked. There was misinformation. It was all these things, a lot of politics. But my point, as I said yesterday, was I wasn't comfortable celebrating people tricking black folks. And I think there needs to be something a little bit more punitive in this whole thing of Juneteenth. Not the people who celebrate it, but the people who cause the pain and trauma. Okay. Today's Saturday Spotlight, brothers and sisters, is love of silence. Now, last year we talked about love of silence, and I gave a lot of examples, the difference between sound and noise, and I don't really want to go back into that, to be honest. Love of silence is something that has been missing in the human conversation, I want to say the last 15 years. With the advent of social media, with the advent of 24-hour television, you never have silence. I went back to McDonald's yesterday, and they said 24 hours. And I was thinking, everybody's thinking, 24 hours of service. You can get food 24 hours. But you know what I thought? I was like, it's 24 hours, and it was never silent for 24 hours. No one ever cut off the lights, swept the floor, told the employees to go home, and in that space, in that edifice, there was quiet. There was silence, where the spirits of the food could talk. The animals around McDonald's can have a conversation. The deer could come out and say, whew, we're glad to get out of here. And I can break it down, brothers and sisters, this way. I love silence so much to the point that I hate to hear my own voice. I don't like to listen to me. Does that make sense? If there was a difference between me talking and me being quiet, I would take me being quiet every time. And it has so much to do with the attachment to sound. We are addicted to sound. We have to hear things, whether it's language, whether it's music, because that addiction to sound somehow gives us security. It somehow makes us in a scenario, brothers and sisters, that we are secure. When the crazy part is, to the exact contrast, we grew up valuing silence. I was Christian, but I remember when we prayed, it was silent. I'm a Muslim. We'll listen to the Imam do a complete thing. He will break his talk and we will sit in silence and he will come back and we will listen to him. And when we pray, we're not talking. Even the Imam who's leading the prayer, he's not talking about him. He's talking in sacred language. Same thing with church. And I began to ask the question, whatever happened to silence? Why is it such a commodity these days? You know, many of you know, I like to get up early in the morning and go to the track. And here's why I like to go to the track early in the morning, because there's nobody there. I have a prerogative where I can shut my mouth, run, and all I might hear is the scuffle of my tennis shoes on the track, the ruffle of rabbits running around, and birds. And it hit me, brothers and sisters, the intellectual capacity of these animals is that they can't make any other noises other than what they make. And it's based against silence. And that silence allows them so much information, so much intelligence, so much, I want to say, gravitas in nature that it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch. If you think about it lately, brothers and sisters, silence has been criminalized. It's been criminalized. If somebody says something about you and you don't respond, you're silent, somehow that must mean that you're complicit with what they said. Or worse, if you don't respond right away, if you're silent, you're weak. Do people really understand the tradition of silence in the world? I mean, literally, do they understand the tradition of silence in the world? That there's a process. Sister Satana and I were talking about, there's a process that people would sit in circles in silence for hours and listen to narrative about where they came from, where their ancestors came from. They call it griots. You know, and in that space, brothers and sisters, it's not just people talking, but we're talking about sacred purpose. You know, for me, silence was something that I learned as a young child, but also as an only child. As an only child, there were times you would be in a room by yourself and you got tired of making noise for two people or three people or trying to have conversations with somebody that wasn't there. You're talking when you're a kid. Or trying to do the dialogue for this doll and this G.I. Joe and this G.I. Joe. And I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was tired of having conversations. And I put down my toys and I listened. I listened for the quietest part of the room, the quietest part of the house. And I found joy and I found rejuvenation in the quietest parts of the house. I said I don't like to hear my own voice. I don't. I'd rather hear silence. And the reason I don't like to hear my own voice, particularly in the crowd, is because sometimes when I'm talking, people equate some type of value with my voice. If I'm talking, they think I have to be funny. I have to say something funny. So here it is again, noise is being valued. So for me, in this regard, I choose silence. And here's the thing I used to say to my students. When I ask you to be quiet, that's one thing. When I ask you to be silent, that's another thing. Quiet means stop talking. Silence means I want you to be quiet, but listen. I want you to hear something. And when I say silence, it means that I want to hear it too. One of the greatest exercises a teacher can have is a quiet room. Now, I'm sure all of y'all been in the classroom and the teacher said we're going to have 15 minutes of quiet time. And it was probably the worst 15 minutes you ever had as a kid. And nobody wanted to say anything, but kids are joking. And then when you get older, you miss that. Think about this. Think about people who have problems with sleep. Just work with me here. Think about people who have problems with sleep. What is the one thing they say when they sleep? I heard something. Something woke them up. I heard something. Something woke me up out of my sleep, and I wasn't able to get back to sleep. The emancipation that silence brings is a heart rest. Does that make sense? It's a heart rest. It is a hard stop, if you will, that says, here's the world, but here's where you can off ramp. Here's where you can find a place, sit there and say, for the next 20, 30, 40 minutes, I just want to listen to the things around you. And here's the beautiful part. Silence doesn't mean that the rest of the world is quiet. It doesn't mean the rest of the world is quiet. It means that the space that you're in, you're mandating that my noise won't be intruding here. My actions in this space will be reflective, possibly. Maybe I'm looking or listening or trying to work out an idea. And I think, it shouldn't be underrated. It shouldn't be underrated. To be able to mandate silence for yourself is 2 parts gratitude and I think 1 part discipline. One of the things I get when I'm silent is I get very grateful. Let me explain what I mean by getting very grateful. When it's very quiet for me and I indulge this love of silence, I hear mercy. I appreciate mercy. I appreciate faith. I appreciate knowing that I'm a part of this world, though I'm not the world. And I also appreciate that there's somebody potentially on the other side of the world that's feeling the same thing. That mercy, that gratitude, placement, if you will. Placement. Now I have Miles Davis behind me. And he was one of the first jazz musicians after the bebop era that would use silence. And it was not to scare folks. I remember my mom was talking to me one time. I was on stage and I thought I had a bad show. And I said, what happened? Da, da, da. I said, the people, they would laugh. They weren't laughing. They were just quiet. My mother said, that's silence. She said, you move from telling jokes to teaching. She said, you move from telling jokes to teaching. See, when you're around wise people, I'm not saying me, but when you're around wise people, throughout history, wise people mandated silence because people wanted to hear what they said. All your great prophets, all your great wise men required the respect that comes with silence. A, they ain't going to say it twice. B, they're not going to say it loud. They're going to say it with purpose. And you, brothers and sisters, and me, brothers and sisters, have to allow that. And in some regards, we have to take that back. Too many people are talking all the time. Folks just talking, you know why? Because they're afraid that if they stop talking, they're not going to get hurt. Does that make sense? They're afraid if they stop talking, they're not going to get hurt. And so what they put out, brothers and sisters, is it has little or no value. It's not a traditional understanding of life. Sister Tana and I were talking about the whole adage of children should be seen and not heard. I agree. The problem is, how old should those children be? I think 21. I think you should reach a level of maturity before you start talking and invading other people's silence. You have 19 and 20-year-olds talking to 14-year-olds right now. Does that make sense? You're going to talk to me about life and you 19 years old. I'm 15 years old. My brothers and sisters, look, and I'm guilty. My first job out of college, I worked as a group home counselor. I worked at adjudicated youths. And there I was, 21 years old, trying to tell a 19-year-old kid, get your life right. And one day I came in and he said, you ain't got nothing to say? And I've been schooled by elder. I said, no. I said, literally, me trying to tell you to get your life right makes me a hypocrite. He said, so what do we do? I said, let's just sit here and be quiet and enjoy the silence. So look, tomorrow's show, and I'm going to wrap up on silence, but tomorrow's show, I want to keep it light. This is the first Father's Day out of the pandemic. And in accordance to what we did with the Mother's Day show, I want us to have a nice time. I want us to enjoy ourselves, but there are people who lost fathers. I'm a witness to people who lost dads, and granddads, and aunts and uncles and things like that, father figures. So I think we need to go ahead and put that in a space and understand that, hey, we're gonna have some fun, but let's treat it with the respect that it's due. So, if you guys don't mind, tomorrow, in lieu of this show, while I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have our show, I would ask that tomorrow, instead of I do a wind up, what I like to do for the fathers, if you will, is just a moment of silence where everybody can kind of sit back and relax and reflect, if you will, and not just reflect. Let's get back to that space where you feel the mercy. You feel the mercy. A lot of people don't know. A lot of times when you're in a stressful situation and people arguing, that pause, that silence is God sent. It is a divine intervention. It is an opportunity for people to reset their hearts. No, we don't do that. I always look at wars and armies and stuff like that. They never, ever let the troops have silence. It's a constant thing about noise, constantly polluting your mind to make sure that you're not at a place where you can get heart rest. You can get mercy rest. So I think it's in that space, brothers and sisters, that I do want to have our show tomorrow. What we got from Adam? It said, it's in the silence, in the darkness that you hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shake hands with Yusuf. Yes, the whispers. It's the whispers in the dark. And it's not the whispers in the dark. It's the whispers in the dark that you can't hear. You just know they're whispers. You ever hear wind blow past your ears, brothers and sisters? When I was a kid, I used to think the wind used to say stuff to me like, "Good morning, preach. Hey, good morning, wind. How you doing, wind?" And then you get a little older and realize, man, that wind's been blowing a long time, way before you showed up. And again, brothers and sisters, I'm not telling anybody to shut up. I'm only saying, love the silence. Love the silence. All right, we're gonna wrap up. Let me get our people out here. My mom's on the show. When I'm silent, I can really hear myself and appreciate whatever's going on with me and my life. This is true. This is true. Lately when I'm silent, man, I get really, really creative. Like I can figure out a whole lot of things. Here's the good part. I can figure out a whole lot of things. It's not just for me, but it's just society. Some of the best runs I've had have just been listening to wind with no vocabulary, with no lexicon, with no intentions attached to it. Appreciating the variance of the wind and the velocity the way it whips around. I'm like, I enjoy it. Sometimes even when I'm on a track, I'll leave my headphones on so people think I'm listening to something. I ain't listening to nothing. I'm just trying to I'm just trying to make them think I'm just trying to enjoy the silence. That's of course that's when people are actually out on the track. But let's go ahead and get to it. I want to thank our sponsors, BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You can call 1-800-888. Hold on a minute. 1-800-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. Do that today. We're also going to give a shout out to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Go to bayanonline.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org. If you're interested in a quality master's level graduate education, in whether it be Islamic studies, Islamic leadership, divinity, all those things, you can do it with Bayan, and I'm a living example. Okay, brothers and sisters. So I hope we touched on some aspects on the love of silence. We don't talk about it enough. Everybody's competing for that space. Silence is sacred. Silence is sacred. I saw that quote that Adam put out by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. But silence is sacred. Sister Satana pointed out that you have people who took vows of silence back in the day. They had monasteries where people didn't talk to one another for years. And you can't even fathom that, because they said the voice they wanted to hear was from God. Amazing. Now, some of us, self-included, maybe we're not that disciplined, but I'm not saying I don't want to talk to anybody for years. But you know what? That morning for the hour, I ain't trying to hear nothing nobody got to say. That's our show, everybody. God bless. See you tomorrow on the Father's Day show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Preacher Moss, SOS. There you are. I know you're looking at your screen going, that's a good looking black man. And you're right. I'm Preacher Moss, and you're not. Today I want to talk about Olive Branch Muslim Family Services, better known as the people who help people. And I need you to help the people who help people so they can continue to, you guess it, help people. Get it? Got it? Good. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Graphic now.